All right. First, welcome to the fourth week of, uh, I guess, Brandon's Black History. Um, it's been a little crazy here lately after the newspaper article went out last week. A lot of people starting to join the Facebook page, and it's starting to get out there. So that's a good thing. I never expected that. I didn't. I only expected like my friends from work, people from Elmwood, maybe from Peoria. Um, but the awesome thing about getting a newspaper article, I'm now getting messages from people by Boston and messages from people in Texas and San Francisco and West Virginia. So it's pretty cool. The lieutenant governor from Illinois tweeted my article out, so I saw that today. So I did comment on it and say thank you for sharing. So it's been pretty cool. So I'm just happy that I at one point I thought I didn't have a platform, right? Like I thought I was just a guy in Central Illinois that things happen outside of here. I have no voice. I can't change anything, and whatever, right? Like things happen. It is what it is. Just keep going to work, keep coaching, try to change your kids, try to teach them how to be better people. And I thought that was my only platform that I had. But then after recent events, I decided, hey, why not? Why not try something? You can't be silent anymore. So this is what we have. So it's been going great for the last couple weeks. And I want to continue to do this as long as I can. So with that, I will start. Tonight, we're going to talk about my grandma's first cousin, the Reverend Joe Carter. He was from Louisiana. All of my family, on my dad's side, is down there. His brother, his mom, and him were in between Peoria and Baton Rouge. That's how I'm here. He went to school at Manual. My dad did, and then went to ISU for school. And then he stayed here when he met my mom. So I kind of wish we were still down in Louisiana, but I'm glad that I'm here right now. So, but yeah, the Reverend Joe Carter, he was born in 1908. He is, after reading the articles about him, is a fiery guy. And as I was saying earlier, I kind of see where I get my personality from in reading his quotes. So to have this history in my family is amazing. And with election year this year, why not talk about the vote, right? Why not talk about people who couldn't vote? And why not talk about that history that I have in my family with the vote? So I will start the presentation. All right. The Reverend Joe Carter. He is one of the pillars in our family that we all want to be. We didn't know about the story of him for a long time, until one day I was at my parents' house and we were talking about grandma's siblings and grandma's cousins, and my dad had brought up the Reverend, because my dad's a pastor also, and then we have multiple reverends in our family. So we got on the topic of Reverend Joe Carter and how he became the first African American to register to vote in 61 years in West Feliciana Parish down in Louisiana. Now in Louisiana, they call them parishes, not counties. If you go down there and call it a county, that's like saying, you like Canada over the USA or something. You don't talk about parishes as counties down there. So they called this Happy Land, which was a Spanish term for the parish. The population was 12,000 and 68% was black. The only thing with the 68% black is there's no voters, right? Like there's no voters in 1963, 1962, 3, 4. They in Louisiana, they have more black people than whites, but they had less than 1% of the vote for blacks. Why would you have, if one parish has 68% black and you hold less than 1% of the vote for black men in your state? Why would that happen? The right to vote. Everybody knows 15th Amendment, adopted in 1870. No matter your race, color, you should be able to vote, right? Well, in the 1900s, you had the Jim Crow laws, okay? 0.05% of the black men were registered to vote in that state, okay? So what they did in Louisiana, if you were white, you could go register to vote, but you had to have 2 people that were registered already to ID you. If you're black, you had to take a test to be able to vote. You had to answer 4 questions right on this test. But then on top of that, you had to have 2 registered voters to ID you. If there's no registered black voters, how are you going to be ID'd by 2 black guys that know you, right? So
Brandon, you and I walk in together to register to vote, and I get to go down this line, and you have to go down this other line. In my line, I sign my name, and your line, you have to take a test.
Yes,
that's what we're going on.
Yep.
Oh my gosh!
But I couldn't walk in with you. You would go first, and I would have to wait outside, right? Like I would have to wait outside, let you do your thing, you come out, and then I would be able to go. But then I would have to take this test, and if I couldn't read, I couldn't pass the test, right? Because back then, how many people in Louisiana who were farmers, like Reverend Joe Carter was, able to read? Right? Like they didn't finish school. They didn't go all the way through high school. Some of them barely made it through 3rd grade, 4th grade, So yeah, you would go in, you sign your name, you're good to go. I would go in, I'd have to take a test. So this man, Richard Kilburn, was the district attorney. He was quoted as saying, any Negroes that come into this courthouse to register to vote, you take their picture. So then again, not only did you have to take a test, not only did you have to be ID'd, but then you had the courthouse taking your pictures as you walk in to try to register to vote. Now, why would they want to take your picture? Because they know who you are and the Klan knows who they're going to get. because they didn't want you voting. Okay. So as he tried to register to vote in 1962, he was arrested and held for 13 hours on a $200 bond. The story, the quotes are, the sheriff came up to Joe Carter and two of his buddies that were in there, another minister and another guy. First thing he says, "Hey, boy." Nobody answers. Second thing he says, "Hey, boy." Nobody answers again. He says, "Hey, boy," one more time. Joe Carter walks up to the sheriff. The sheriff has a piece of paper. Joe Carter wrote his name on the registration to vote. The sheriff marks a black line through it and says, "Aren't you satisfied, boy?" Reverend Joe Carter, I think this is where I get it from. He says, "No, I'm not satisfied. What makes you think I'm satisfied?" So after that, the sheriff tells another officer to grab him, to arrest him, because he raised his voice at him. So a year before he's registered to vote, he's sitting in jail for 13 hours because he's a black man trying to vote. Now, granted, the 15th Amendment, he had every right. They had every right. So after this, CORE was down in Louisiana. They were in the South working on voter registration. They're trying to get people signed up to vote. Reverend Joe Carter got a hold of two people in CORE to come over to their parish and start doing groundwork to get their vote out. If you don't know CORE, you probably heard of the Freedom Rides. You probably heard of the March on Washington with Martin Luther King. The Freedom Summer, which is another thing that I will be touching on, was a program in Mississippi in 1964 when they were trying to get people to register to vote there. And 3 people out of their group were killed by the Klan in Mississippi in 1964. They desegregated the Chicago schools and Durham. So CORE was playing a huge part in the civil rights movement in the 60s. Okay. So they started their civil rights movement for voting in 1961. So Joe Carter gets with that group, and they start working on that process, right? Helping these people pass the test, helping these people learn how to read, and then also trying to protect people from any threats or any violence from the others. So they went door to door. They sat in people's houses. They went to churches. They talked to people as they were driving. Hey, we really need you guys to vote. Okay. We know you want to vote, so we're here to help you vote. Right. So they did all this groundwork for a year from 1962 to 1963 and helping all of these people get the right to vote, because they all had to take that test to be able to sign their name and get a registration card. But then their neighbors did not have to do any of this. You know, they just walk in, registered vote, and they're good to go. But for a parish the size of this, to have 68% black and to not have anybody able to vote, that's big, right? Like, you get to control everything if the other people can't vote. So one of his quotes, "A man is not a first-class citizen unless he is a voter." So if you don't vote, if you don't take that part of the Constitution and practice it, and I agree, you're not first class, right? Like that's telling me that you really don't care what goes on. And they cared a lot. He cared a lot that he wanted to help others, not just himself. He wanted to help others get that right to vote. So some of his quotes from the day that he was from a couple days, I'm going down to register today. This is him talking to his wife. "I done started it now. Ain't no need trying to stop me. I'm going through with it." I feel like that's part of me too. So he was set on doing this. He didn't care what others thought. He didn't care what could happen. He just knew that he wanted that right to vote, and he was going to practice his right because they earned it with the 15th Amendment. The threats, lots of them. The Klan, the white mobs, threatening them with lynching, right? These are all things that they had to worry about. My cousin was ready, right? Like they knew what could happen. This whole group of black men, black women knew what could happen. So they were prepared to fight for their right. Okay. So the threats of lynching, there was a young man before Joe Carter went to vote who was lynched for yelling at a white man. Right? Like just yelling at somebody, you end up in a tree. So everybody knew that, hey man, if you go in here and register to vote, something's gonna happen to you. Well, he didn't care. He didn't care what was gonna happen to him. He just wanted his right like everybody else. Registration day. This was October 17th, 1963 was the day he went to register to vote. They were met by a group of white people out front. There was about 40 black people that rode the bus to the courthouse, and they got off. So they were met with this group of people that didn't want them going in to vote. There was 2 white people inside registering to vote already. So all of the black people had to wait outside. So you have about 40 or so people waiting outside to register to vote, but you got to wait for 2 people to come outside. So the 2 get done, they register, and Joe Carter gets to go inside, and now it's his turn. He passed the test. He answered 4 questions right. They said the clerk went to the sheriff, said, "Hey, do you see anything wrong with this?" "Nope, I don't see nothing wrong with it." He answered all 4 questions right. So he's now registered to vote. So he gets to sign his name, walks outside. The people from CORE, as you can see, are standing there. That is his registration card that they're handing over and taking pictures with. So that was a big day. Big day for him to be able to walk in there and do that.
Brandon?
Yes.
What were the 4 questions? Do you know?
I do not know, but they were from what I read, they were not anything hard, but it was, if you couldn't read, you weren't going to pass them, and okay. It was stuff about the state, and then I think there's a couple questions about the country on there.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So in 61 years in that parish, no other black man had registered to vote. In 61 years. Between that 61 years, they had 13 registered black man voters. It's not a lot for a 68% population of African Americans. To quote one of his buddies, might be the last time you see him. Take these pictures. This was the quote. Take a picture. It might be the last time you see him. Because they knew if anything, they knew something was coming, right? Like they knew the Klan was going to be after him. So they said, take as many pictures as you can, because you might not see him tomorrow. And if you do see him tomorrow, he's going to be in a tree, right? Or floating down the river. Because that's how it was. There weren't just lynchings down in Louisiana. They would kill people and then throw them in the Mississippi, and you would see them floating down the river. So not only did your family not get a burial, your family didn't get to see you, after you pass. There's nothing left. They just put you in the river and let you go. So,
Brandon, I have a question. Caleb actually he was doing the math in his head, and he figured something out, that Joe Carter registers in 1965. So that means like turn of the century, 1900s. There was a gap there of like 30 years from 1870, when the 15th Amendment is passed, to 1900. Were there black voters in that parish? And then Plessy versus Ferguson and all that stuff, Jim Crow laws come about, and that, do you know, I mean, was there a point where it seems like maybe there's like this 30-year window where maybe something was happening and they backed off, or maybe those freed slaves never got around,
So what happened was they had, so before that, the 61 years before he voted, they had 13 register in that parish. And then when Jim Crow and all that stuff started, the Klan was so big down there that they would threaten anything, right? If you look at somebody wrong, you're going to get lynched. If you yell at somebody, you're going to get lynched. If you register to vote, you're going to get lynched. So there's a lot of that. And then of course, you have to take the test. They also talked about taxing the vote. So if you wanted to vote, you're gonna be charged to register to vote. So if you did pass your test, could you afford it? So there was anything and everything that they could do to suppress the vote. They did.
I think if I remember correctly, in the South, there were actually elected officials, but then when they started introducing all these Jim Crow laws and the harassment and intimidation started, or was continuing, that's when a lot of the elected officials they were intimidated into not continuing with their work, or they were pushed out of the area and then they moved to different areas.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
Right. And then so the people in the South started turning conservative, right? Like, I don't want to get too into that part, but the people in the South started turning conservative then and going over to the other party because they didn't like the way that where the Democrats were going, right? Like, they didn't like that. At first, the Democrats were Jim Crow laws and all that stuff. Well, then you always have these party changes, which I've talked to some people about before. That the parties that we have today aren't the parties that they were like back in the 60s and back when Lincoln was president. And I think there was another change in there too, where these parties had switched sides. But yeah, intimidation was probably one of the biggest parts. And then, yeah, people, those officials didn't want to stay in office, right? Like, they move, go somewhere else because they didn't want to die. I mean, this is stuff that people died over back then. And we are still seeing voter suppression now. The whole thing with the voter ID stuff, it's the same thing. Unfortunately, some people can't afford a $25 ID. Depending on where you live, what state you're in. I know here you have your ID, you register, but then when you go to the polling place, you don't have to show your ID. You have your card, they match up your card, you sign, and then you go. But there's other places that are trying to do more. Again, with that tax also, there are some states that are trying to tax the vote, right? Can you afford to register to vote? So that's a big push on that.
What do you mean by taxing the vote?
So,
are you saying just getting the ID card?
No. So what they're doing is, if you go to register, they're going to make you pay for it.
Where is that?
So there's been multiple states that have talked about it. They haven't done it, but they have talked about it. I think I was reading the other day. Don't get me. It's one of the Carolinas that was trying it, and it never went anywhere. I don't even think it went through the House or the Senate or whatever. It's just stuff that they talk about, right? Like, we're going to tax this vote, we're going to make people pay for it, or we're going to make them get these ID cards, right? And they have to have it. So if they can't afford it, oh well, they don't get to vote. Also, another thing is, felons, when you're in prison, you can't vote, right? Like, everybody knows that, right? Like, felons, if you're in prison, you can't vote. Well, in some areas, when that felon is out of prison, this is the part that they don't tell you, they can vote. So when they're out, they are able to vote. And a lot of people don't know that. They just keep pushing you're a felon, you can't vote. You're a felon, you can't vote. But you can, and you just didn't know that because you didn't do your homework.
I know in Illinois they allow felons to vote after they get out. You can register. And I think in Illinois that if you're going to get just a regular ID card, it's like $5, and they may even waive the fee if it's for a voter ID, or you have to have it for your ID.
Yes, didn't it go up to $25 for ID? I want to say ID now in Illinois is like 20. I mean, they raise everything,
right?
About $25 for ID, or maybe 10. And then I know that I did see some, if there's a voter ID, there was some kind of fee. It didn't say what the fee was, but I was looking at other states trying to find other information. But with the suppression of voting, I mean, heck, we talked about a couple of weeks ago how they're shutting down polling places in states and then making all of these people go to one because they're trying to say that COVID is the reason why they're closing these places down. But it doesn't make sense when you make all of these people go to one polling place. You know, you would think you would open up more polling places instead of shutting them down.
Wasn't that also those states that were pushing for mail-in ballots? And that's the reason why they shut them down, which I agree with you is rather stupid that they didn't have the regular number of voting stations open.
So I know one state was Kentucky, who they're not going to do mail-in ballots because that's McConnell, right? Like they're not going to do that. So I know they shut down a lot of polling places in the Black communities and then made all of those people go to or try to get to one area to vote.
I'll break in with the money here. According to the internet, which I think we can, it's the state ID basics. If you're under 18, Illinois ID is $5, and you wouldn't be voting anyway. But if you are over 18, it is $20.
Yes. Yep.
And we always thought, who wouldn't have a driver's license? And the answer is people who live in a city.
Right.
Yeah.
I have cousins that don't have a driver's license and don't even want to drive ever.
Yes.
So then they have to have an ID, right? Like they have to go get an ID, and some of them can't. Some of them are in college and they don't have money. They're living paycheck to paycheck to eat, and they're going to school, and but if they ask me for $20, I'll give them $20. They can go get ID. So,
well, hey, Brandon.
Yep.
It's okay. I wasn't sure if it was okay for me to interject here.
Yeah, you're fine.
But on this whole ID thing, doesn't that also apply to they have to have an ID anytime you go to a doctor or just about anything else you do?
Right.
I mean, because there are so many things out there other than voter registration that requires an ID.
Yeah.
So, so we can't just base this just on voter suppression because there's so many other things that it required as well.
Right.
And all of our prices in Illinois are set by a Democratic governor.
Well,
Illinois is run by Democrats. I mean, let's be real.
Correct. We know that. So,
I mean, I hate getting off on the whole this party, that party thing because it really shouldn't apply here, but at least my opinion, but
yeah. So,
I mean, I just don't think that we should completely use that as an excuse, but I think that it should be so much easier for people to get an ID, not just, what I mean is, I guess maybe I think $1 would be fair,
Yes, for an ID.
You can't come up with $1. Yeah, right? You know what I mean? So I think they need to change the cost, not so much the ID.
Right.
To make it accessible for everybody.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't, because if you don't, and God, I hate saying this one too, you could have anybody from any country show up and say, I live here, and they'll start voting. Well, no, they shouldn't.
Well, yeah, but then that's when your social security number plays in, right? Like,
no. Right, but how do you prove that? Without an ID.
Well, that's not on your ID.
Right.
See, that's not on your.
But see, that's the problem. You can make up a social security number.
People
do it all the time.
Can I interject?
Oh, sure.
As someone who became a citizen, I had a social security number once I had a green card when I came to this country, and you need a social security number in order for you to register to vote.
Correct.
And that's look at when you go to vote. They look at your registration card, which is what I have in order for me to vote, and they how you can make sure that you are in
fact. But it's a process of IDs, though.
But what I'm saying is that I don't think that when Brandon's talking about voter suppression, he's not just talking about the registration. And Brandon, I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak.
No, you're fine.
That it's not just about that. It's all these other factors that go into voter suppression. And it may not necessarily apply 100% now, but it definitely did over the course of the last 40, 50 years, intimidation and not having enough polling sites, or when you go to the polling site, you don't feel comfortable going in to vote. So it's not just the registration process that causes the voter suppression. I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Brandon.
Nope,
just
you're
my
good.
2 cents.
No, that's what this whole platform was meant to be. We can have open discussion, right? Even when I'm doing this, and that's something that I would like to get to soon. Is
I'm sorry I led this astray.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Hey, questions are good questions, right? We're all here to learn something. So the Social Security thing is free if you're born here. I don't know about when you come over to get a green card, but I know when you're born here, you automatically get that number, and that number stays with you, right?
Right.
Like it's not, you can't just make up a number that's not in the system. You're going to have to hack the whole United States database to put your number in there just to be able to vote. I don't see people doing that.
I think, Brandon, when you get your Social Security number, they give you the form. Probably now they do it right at the hospital, but when my kids were born, you had to go and fill out the form and provide their birth certificate and all those kinds of things, and your ID for that.
Right.
Well, I'm kind of basing a little bit of my information off. I have a cousin that works for INS. That's kind of where I get some of my info. Whether it's right or wrong, you never know from them either. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
And he says what a lot of them do is, most of them being not most other countries, but a lot of them, I hate to use the term here again, Mexicans. They actually they don't apply or don't hack. They just randomly select a set of numbers and nobody ever checks it. Is how they're using Social Security.
Well, that would be on the people working then. If you're
right.
Not
that's what I'm saying. It can't. So that's all. I guess my point was, it can be gotten around.
Right. But if you go vote, there's already a registration card there, right? And then
you know what? You're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, you take your card that you get in the mail, right? And then they have your card, and then they match it up. And if they don't match or your card's not in there, you can't vote.
You are correct. I stand corrected.
And I want to throw in
long roundabout way of getting there, but I stand corrected.
I'd like to throw in just one more thing, and then I'll be quiet.
All right.
When you go to get an ID at the motor vehicle place,
you
have to come up with there's 4 columns of stuff that you have to come up with. They've got 4 categories, and you have to come up with one thing from each category. Right. Your birth certificate, somebody to vouch for you that you're who you are, and then a couple of bills or something, because we had to do that for my mom when she came back from California because she drove no more. And that was a real jump through the hoops thing to get the ID for her.
Right.
Yeah, it's an overwhelming process.
Yeah. So we have all that stuff now, and then back in the 60s, all they needed was 2 guys to vouch for you, and if you couldn't find those guys, which in the Black community, there weren't anybody registered to vote. So how could you get 2 guys to come in for you?
Hey, Brandon, do you know if they had, did the Black guys have to bring 2 Black guys, or could white people speak for them, or do you have any idea how that worked?
So they had to know them. So yes, it could have been 2 white guys, or a white and a Black guy. but they were so segregated then that trying to find, even if you knew the guy, trying to find somebody to walk in with you would be hard, because then, you know, the sheriff knows his buddies, and then boom, hey man, he's been hanging out with those black guys, and he came in and let them vote, you know, let them register to vote. So one of the quotes in there was, you need to bring 2 people who are registered to vote. Rev Joe Carter said, you guys know who I am, right? Like, you guys know who I am. You're here. You can do that. They would not do it, right? Like, the sheriff wouldn't do it. The attorney wouldn't do it. The clerk wouldn't do it. I mean, he's a reverend down there, and they knew who he was. But if one of them would have done it, then they would have been shunned by their other friends, right? So that was a big thing then too. So back to the Reverend. No fear, which is, you know, a thing that our whole family is kind of modeled after. This was taken after he registered to vote. This was that night. He went home, told the wife to go, you know, to relative's house, get out. The Klan's probably coming to the house. Okay. Second Amendment right there, right? I'm going to protect my house. I'm going to protect myself. And if you walk onto this property, we're going to have it out. Okay. So this picture I actually have in my house. It's an awesome picture. But what you don't see in this picture, it wasn't just him waiting for the Klan. There are some friends in the house with their shotguns. And since he was a farmer, he lived by the woods. And in the woods, there were scattered a bunch of other black men waiting for the Klan to show up. Because they knew for a fact, after all the threats that he had gotten, and after he did this, somebody was going to go say, hey, that Reverend Joe Carter, that farmer, registered to vote today. We need to go get him. So they waited, and they waited, and they waited, but the Klan never showed up. I would say luckily for the Klan members, the first guys who were going to walk up there, luckily they didn't show up because they would have had a hard time taking those guys out of there. So that, I mean, that is Second Amendment right there. Everybody has that right. And to have that picture in my house is awesome. But yeah, no fear, wasn't afraid. Can't be afraid to take a stand. Can't be afraid to speak up. And I feel like that's me right now, right? Like, I thought I had no platform. Thought I was just a guy in rural Illinois who couldn't affect anything. And here I am giving classes every Tuesday night. Never thought this would happen. So that is the end of that. So now we move on to open discussion. Any questions? Anything with voting, since it is election year, or anything that's going on in the country? This is our time to talk about it.
Brandon, I put that a link to that Ebony article on my Facebook. So if you want to grab that, you can throw it onto the your Brandon's history page. I think some people. It's a pretty intense article that was written right after that. So.
Yeah, it's awesome to have that too. Have that history for my family, and then able to read that stuff. So.
My husband was in Louisiana in the service at Fort Polk, in 1971,
Mhm.
which would have been 10 years after this. But because we were both raised in central Illinois, we were not used to saying parish and all that sort of thing. I still remember I went down there to live with him for a little bit before he was shipped overseas. And the courthouse, speaking of intimidation, still had the bathrooms and the water fountains marked white and colored. And to a person like me who was not used to seeing that, it was frightening to me as a white person to see it. And when I asked about it, I didn't ask anybody in authority because I was too scared. They said, well, everybody knows that doesn't apply anymore, but they didn't take them down.
Yeah, they're still there.
So that was in Leesville, Louisiana. I can't remember the name of the parish. It's been too long ago, but it was, there were still subtle hints.
Right.
The federals couldn't make them do what they told them to.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see that kind of throughout the South, here and there, especially like smaller communities, not so much the big communities.
Yes, nobody went to Leesville, Louisiana.
Yeah, right. Like,
yeah.
so just think about if it was me driving down and stopping there, and then to walk in and see that and be like, okay,
yeah.
Well, I don't need to stop here anymore. I don't need to go to the restroom. We're gonna hit the next town. But yeah, that's crazy.
Well, hey, Brandon, I had another question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you think about the Black Americans who don't believe in removing things such as the water fountains as a reminder of what was? Do you think they're wrong? Agree with them to a point? I'm curious. I'm just trying to get everybody's perspective on these things. And
so it depends on what it is, right? Like if it is if it's a statue of a Confederate general, those statues were erected to show that they had slaves and that they owned slaves, and it's there in your face. I feel like those should be taken down.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
I get it.
Yeah. So
I said I'm not trying to do a judgment thing. I'm asking, perspective.
Yeah. Now taken down in the right way also, right? Like I don't like we're gonna go rip it down by ourselves and put hooks and ropes on it. I feel like the state or the city should be in charge of taking it down, and if they don't take them down, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying all of it needs to go,
right?
Take it all down, whatever. But no, if they choose to take it down, they choose to take it down.
Sure.
If they don't choose to take it down, then I can choose not to spend my money there, right? Like,
exactly. Nope. Absolutely.
So that's where I stand on that. I'm not saying that all of them should be taken down no matter what, but I do see some things that some of them do. Some of them do need to be taken down, depending on who it was, right? And then I don't know. It's that's one thing that I'm kind of iffy on.
Sure.
I'm not 100% either way.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Speaking of the monument at Germany after World War II, when they were kind of going through their process of recognizing what had happened there with the Holocaust, they made it a point to take all of those things that were part of their history, but they placed it in museums and they placed it in places where then there's information to explain everything. Because I think that sometimes when you look at a monument, you are looking at it and giving it honor. And I think that, I don't know, if personally, as someone from India who grew up over here, when I see the Confederate flag, I don't think of that as something that I would want to honor, because that's something that, I mean, the way I'm recognized in this country would not, I would not be seen as a full citizen in this country under that flag. Even though I'm not Black, I'm definitely not white. And so I would not be considered a full citizen of this country either. And so I think that it has a place. I don't think you can forget that it has some historical value, because it's part of our story. It's part of our country's story. But I think that it has to be recognized in a place where there is given us, where it's explained more. Not only for us, but I think for our children as well, and their children, as opposed to just putting it out there and there's not a lot of explanation for it. I saw this documentary where they were describing one of the leaders or the generals for the during the Civil War, and it was very honorific. And this is they were part of a military that was against our country. And so it's just kind of strange to me, looking at it from my point of view, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, things need to be put in a museum, but then, don't erase it. That's what we're here for today, right? Like all of this history that I'm talking about has pretty much been erased and swept under the rug because people don't want to hear about the bad part of America, right? But a bad part of America does have statues and a flag, and it is in your face. And we were down in Florida, I think, and we're driving around, and boom, big old Confederate flag and a Confederate statue, right? Like, I take a left and boom, it's right there. Does it need to be there? I don't know, probably not. Could it go into the museum? Yes, for sure. Kids go there all the time. They can talk about it there. They can teach it in school. They can do all that. But do we need it to idolize it, right? Like, do we need to build a statue about it? Those statues were built for a reason, and it's not the reason that people think they are today. It's not because, hey, we need to remember our heritage or remember our history. No, those statues were built back then to remind Black people that, hey, we owned you. And we're going to build these statues of these guys to make sure that you remember that and you stay in your place.
Why do you say that?
Because it is to build a statue of someone who did a lot of terrible things to a race is a slap in the face, right? If Germany built a statue of Hitler, that would be a slap in the face to every Jew, right?
Yes.
So if you build statues of people that owned another race or fought for a confederacy that did not want to be a part of the Union, right? They did not want to be a part of our country. Because they wanted to keep their slaves and they wanted to keep money. Everything's all about money, right? And to have slaves in the South was how they made their money.
But Blacks also had slaves too.
We all know that, but did Blacks in the United States own slaves? Did we have enough money to own slaves here?
Yes.
Like,
there were some Black people down in the South that had their own slaves. And also you've got the Irish that came over, and that they came over as indentured servants, which is basically slavery for them, but they had a chance to get out where the blacks did not, unless their master freed them.
Correct.
But I kind of disagree with you a little bit on the statues. I don't know as it was, in my opinion, and I will do research on this, but I don't think necessarily it was put up so these people, so they could say, okay, remember that we owned slaves. We owned you. I think it was brought up. I think it was brought up because, or put up, because these were generals in the Confederate Army, and they were, you know, revered. Whether they wanted to be a part of from the United States or not, they felt that the people of the South felt that the North was trying to tell them how to run their business, and they didn't like it, and so they fought. And
most of the monuments were put up in the 50s and 60s. They were not put up right after the Civil War. They were put up during the civil rights unrest. So it's almost like a direct correlation between, oh, there's the civil rights movement going on, and so let's put up these. Most of them were put up around the 50s and 60s, not after the Civil War. And actually, I think there was a quote where even Robert E. Lee said that we don't want statues up of ourselves after the war. They didn't want that up because they felt that then it would not allow the country to heal if that was going to happen.
Then I agree with that statement there. But I also think that when the battle flag, which is the stars and bars that everybody sees, that became very popular during the civil unrest in the 50s and the 60s too. Because isn't the Confederate flag totally different? It's a different flag than the bars and stars.
Yes, right?
Yes, it is.
The bars and stars was not the Confederate flag.
Right. It's the battle flag.
But why do we have the Confederate flag?
Well, because I think, is it Jayshree? I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Yep, you said it right.
Okay. As she said, in the 50s and the 60s, when the civil rights movement was going on and everything, it was kind of like those people's rallying cries. Is it, you know, just like any other group that has their rallying cry, or they carry their signs with whatever they want to have on it.
They use that flag to intimidate people.
Yeah, awkward silence.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be like, you know, I'm a school counselor by trade, and these are the conversations that I have with my students in my school. So when some of the students come in and they're wearing the battle flag, whatever, the Confederate flag on their hats or on their belt buckles and whatever not, and then I have my students who are Black who come into my are upset, but they can't do anything about it because it upsets them, because that flag to them means that you don't see me as equal to you. You know, that's the way, you know, when I see that flag, that's the way I see it as well. And I understand what you're saying in terms of, yeah, that was their rallying cry, but was their rallying cry appropriate? You know, it's like the swastika for the Nazis. It was their rallying cry too, but we don't see people, you know, put out the flags for the Nazi swastika, you know. And I'm Hindu, or I grew up Hindu, and the swastika is a sign of peace. But I would never wear or put up a swastika here in the United States because it has a completely different meaning than what it is in actuality, which it means peace, actually.
Actually, the Indians in the United States have used the swastika. I don't know if it's exact as the one from Germany, but they have had that as a symbol also, which probably means the peace.
The swastika has been used for over 5,000 years, long before the Germans ever used it. Yeah, and it does mean peace. Actually, it's used in the Hindu ceremonies and things like that. But what I'm saying is, you wouldn't use a symbol of something like what the Nazis used and put that out and say, oh, everyone should be okay with that. I think that most of us would not be okay with somebody putting out a swastika flag or a Nazi flag. We would not be okay with that, because of the symbol that what it generates, the feelings that it generates for people. At least that's my opinion. I'm just,
Yeah.
I was, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I was a high school teacher, and we had, we made visual representations sometimes. I had a kid who wanted to use a Confederate flag, not a Confederate flag, the Northern Virginia battle flag that we all recognize as the Stars and Bars, and another student who wanted to use the swastika. And for both of them, when they gave me but this doesn't mean what you say it means. This means peace, or this means, I like the Dukes of Hazzard, or whatever. My response to them was that the things that we present, our clothing, our car, our house, all those things are to present ourselves to other people. We can say we're doing it for ourselves. Like, I'm wearing my sweats because I want to feel comfortable, but we have particular kinds of sweats that we wear, depending upon what image we want to portray. And that image, they and I both knew that wasn't accurate. The image they wanted to portray was, I'm some kind of tough guy that you don't want to mess with. And it was, I feel that way about I agree that at some point, not everybody who has a Confederate flag on their Matchbox toy car is
racist,
an evil person. But it's like, but better now. You know what people think now. So that's why I object to that kind of symbolism. And the same way with Confederate generals. If we can say they were our worthy opponents, but I read a thing that said, I'm a Christian and Satan is our worthy opponent, but I don't put a statue up to him.
Right.
Even if my ancestors thought he was great. So, yeah.
Kyle, you got something?
Oh, well, I was going to add to it, but actually, I guess I'll go ahead and say it. I got a cousin, my cousin Mike. He's a white guy. He's 62. He's been married to a black woman now for 37 years. He still has a huge Confederate flag in his garage. And she is okay with it. And I asked him about all that. When all this started going on, we're completely different sides of the fence politically. He's just short of being an Antifa member, just short of. but he justifies it by saying that it represents him and his rebellious state, not as a racist, if that makes any sense. He says it kind of represents his rebellion against the political machine, I guess. I mean, he goes off into these tangents that okay, after a while. Okay, Mike.
Yes,
but anyway,
that kind of sounds like, there's a lot of groups that are rebellious, right? Like there's a lot of people that feel that way, and like, hey, I have this flag, the South was rebellious, even though they lasted 5 years separated from the Union. If that tells you where rebellion gets you.
Absolutely, and trust me, it got him. To be honest, his rebellion got him in and out of jail quite a bit.
So if that's how you justify it, I mean, everybody's going to try to justify something.
Oh, exactly.
For themselves, right? But I mean, I would say he's not racist. I mean, he's married to a black woman, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's so. But it is 2020, right?
Right.
Everybody knows what the Confederate did, right? Everybody knows that they left the Union. They fought against their own people to enslave another group of people to keep their money machine going, and that was the cotton down south, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And also to keep that money going, where we can trade and sell slaves. Because going back to the Irish, right? Going back to the Irish slave, which is totally not the same thing, but since it got brought up, black slaves were more expensive than the Irish slaves. Why? You know, why were black slaves more expensive? Because they were bigger, they were stronger, and they were easier to get over from Africa, right? There was more of them to get, right? There were more men. The Irish slaves that came over with more kids and women, and
Right.
you know that they're not going to be out there in the fields working in the hot sun, picking cotton, doing all that stuff, right? So they were more expensive. If I can get all of these guys, right, and I don't need them all, boom, I can sell them and make money. If I can get these guys picking cotton, boom, I'm making all this money off the cotton. But for that flag right now, everybody knows what that flag stood for, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't care if it's for your rebellious state. As long as it stays in your garage, I guess that's okay. But once it enters the back of your pickup truck, you know, and you're driving it down the street, then it comes something totally different.
Absolutely.
I'd like to throw in my 2 cents on Kyle's relatives there. He may have been rebellious, but as a man who was married to a black woman that I presume that he loved and everything else, he was a real jerk because he didn't think of her feelings with regards to that flag. And maybe she was as insulted as you are with the flag, but he didn't care. And
Actually, she was perfectly fine with it as far as she was concerned. That was history, and that's exactly what she says.
Well, maybe she said that just because she felt it was politically correct.
I don't think so.
Well, whatever.
Because there are so many. I have run across a lot of black people that have that don't have any whites really in their lives, but they still have one. I was just seen one the other day. He said he's proud of his heritage, proud of where he comes from, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not condoning or anything like that. I'm just saying there are those out there of the black race who still do not find it offensive.
Yes, there are, right, and I would say there are also black people that are going to vote for certain people too. You know,
yep, there's a lot of them too.
That's just how it is, and I can't talk to them, right? Like I can't talk to them about what it means and what it is, but you'll see a lot of those people down south, right? Like you'll see them down south. Hey, this is a part of our heritage, but going back to, you know, it's sometimes those people's families actually fought for the Confederacy because they used the slaves to fight, right?
Yep. Yeah, there was those too. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Just like the Union freed the slaves and then turned around and used them to fight, right?
Yeah.
They were extra bodies. They were, you know, which I'm going to talk about. Harriet Tubman doing her thing during the Civil War and all that stuff. So that's another story. But yeah, I mean, there's people on both sides that'll say, hey, the flags are bad. Hey, the flags are fine, whatever. I feel like she is telling the truth when she says, hey, my husband has the flag up and I'm fine with it. Because if she wasn't, I feel like that would be a strain in their marriage. if she wasn't okay with it, because that would be something that she would see and look at and then have to deal with. And then you don't want that, right? Like
it's kind of funny. I mean, I shouldn't say it, but she's almost as big a redneck as he is. I mean, yeah, they live right down in the central part of Georgia.
Okay. Oh well, see, who knows what her family history is right down in Georgia?
Exactly, and I don't really.
Who knows if her family, if she might have family that fought in the war also.
Sure.
We don't know, so maybe that's why she feels that way. I don't know. I can't tell other people how to feel. So all I can do is try to teach our history and try to bring things up that we don't learn in school, which is what this is all for. This conversation has went from voting to this, which whatever. That's
well, I'm
what
going to say I've actually learned quite a bit from you already, and I appreciate these. I know this is only my first one, but I appreciate you holding these, and I appreciate the information you're sharing.
Thank you.
Brandon or Todd.
Yes.
I'm not enough of a history buff to know if you were they mentioned Irish slaves, which I wasn't familiar with. I thought they were like just indentured servants, and that then you wouldn't own their children.
Yeah, there's a fine line there too.
Is it possible that were any people actually enslaved, like I own you and I own your kids and I can sell your children away from you, except for black people?
I believe the Chinese went through a bout of that for a while when they first came over here.
The Chinese and the Indians.
Yes.
Right.
So you mean Indian, like Native American Indians?
Yes, Native American.
The Chinese and Native Americans were both bought and sold.
And their children would be bought and sold then?
Yes.
Okay.
Brandon?
Yes.
I have a question, a little off subject. I had a best friend growing up, Monique Freeman, and she was a white girl. And she showed me in their front hall a family tree. Her dad was into genealogy.
Okay.
And she said, yes, we have a slave in our family tree, in our history. And they were pretty excited about it. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, of course you do. You have great hair and good skin tone, But I wondered how common that is for American descendants of slavery to have documentation or to be aware of that. Do you know?
We are aware in our family. It goes back a certain point and then it stops. But we are aware that we had slaves in our family. And we know it was master and slave and, that whole deal, kind of like Jefferson and his, mistress that he had. So yeah, it is common, but a lot of the records, though, a lot of people don't know because the records are gone, right? Like they didn't keep those records because, they didn't want people knowing that, hey, I had a kid with this lady and, all that stuff was hidden.
Right. History was gotten rid of.
Yes. Like, which is funny, like what we're talking about now, right? Like all of this history, has been erased from the books and erased from our school textbooks because they don't want you to know the bad part of our history, right? So we don't talk about it. We don't bring it up. But to have a family tree, though, that's awesome. Like, I don't know. That's cool. And I kind of wish we had that to know exactly who it was and where, but yeah, we know it's Louisiana, right? Like we know that. We just don't know past that who it was,
on
When we talk-
on National Public Radio, on NPR, and the Hidden Brain series that they have, they actually had a really good story today about Thomas Jefferson and his family, and then also his what Brendan, you called her his mistress, but she was he owned her.
Yeah.
He had like 3 or 4 kids with her. Well, and I think that and his home, maybe it was several years ago, where they actually made a note and to indicate her role in his life as well, and his role in her life as well, because they never had that before. They never acknowledged her.
Right.
But then they did. He has descendants, children from her and him, that, like you were saying, that family tree.
Right.
They went through all the way to now. So I thought it was a very interesting story. You guys should check it out. It's called Hidden Brain, and it's about Thomas Jefferson on National Public Radio.
Cool. Hidden Brain.
Hey, Brandon.
Yep.
Hey, kind of backtracking to your voter ID laws and such. I know it's anecdotal, but your cousins, you said, don't have driver's license, but do they not have ID of any kind?
So I was just using that as a example of people that don't drive. My cousin who is in college has an ID, right? I can't say that all of my cousins have IDs. Okay, so I have cousins that I really don't talk to. I mean, everybody probably has those cousins, but I can't say for sure if they have an ID. But I also know, like, there's some that they're not going to vote anyway, so it wouldn't matter. But I know here in Illinois, if you do go get your ID, they automatically ask you if you want to register to vote, right? So you go sign up for an ID. Hey, do you want to register? And we'll put you in this line to fill out the application. I do have some cousins that don't drive, but yes, they do have a state ID.
Okay.
I'm
in agreement that voting's kind of the pinnacle of citizenship, but there's a lot of things that you need ID for. I mean, I don't know how you open a bank account without one. You can't get on a plane without one. And there's all sorts of things you can't do without an ID. I was just wondering how they get by otherwise.
Well, right, but that's where your social comes in, right? Like, your social holds everything. So do you really need a photographed ID when there is a electronic number that is hooked up to you from the day you set foot on this earth?
Absolutely. You will not get a bank account without a picture ID.
You know, Brandon, years ago, I'm old enough to know that years and years ago, when I first got my social security card, that was printed right on there. This is not to be used as an identification. I mean, it's changed now that they do use it as an ID, but that was not the original intent for your social security card number.
And there are still many places that will not accept it as an ID card.
Well,
Correct.
No, but you do have to have it.
Why?
Yeah, you do not have
You don't
to.
have to have one.
If I
Only
go,
if you're going to work.
It's not law that you have to have a social security card.
if I fill out a credit app, don't I have to have it?
You got to have picture ID to go with it.
Yeah.
Every place you go. I have yet to get a loan anywhere where I did not have to show a picture ID. I'm 51 years old and I've had a lot of loans.
If you were going to come to our town and you were going to rent a place or sign up for the utilities, they would want a picture of your ID.
Absolutely. Yeah, they won't take your social security card.
No.
You got to have picture ID.
So what you're saying is everybody should have a picture ID to go vote.
Absolutely.
I say you should have a picture ID because you need it to identify yourself if you're going to do all those other things too. But I think you should
Right.
have it for your for voting, because whether it's 1 or 100 people, that's less chance of fraud.
Right.
But if you
And I also believe that, well, and I say yes, I think everybody should have one, even to vote. But I think that, like I said, it should be so much easier to get.
right, Right.
I think our system of getting it is flawed. Absolutely flawed, by leaps and bounds flawed, but it should still have we should still have to have one.
Yeah. So then my other question is like the state of Illinois, when you go get your voter ID and you go get your ID and you register to vote,
Right.
You're telling me that I still need to hold on to that ID to go vote?
Absolutely.
I think it should be a law, yes, that you need to have a voter ID.
Yeah, if you can't prove who you are,
ID to show people. In my town, there's only 800 people in my town, so everybody knows everybody. You don't even have to show anything. You tell them your name and they know you. But if you're in a big city or someplace else, yeah, you need to be able to have confidence that the voting is above board.
Right. So if somebody shows up with a fake Social Security number, well, now they vote on that Social Security number, and the real person shows up with one. Now they're screwed because they can't vote.
I think that whole concept of voter registration fraud has been proven to not be, like, they've done many studies where it's shown that does not happen.
Yes.
I will disagree with you on that.
So very slim in terms of how that happened. You know, like, it's just not, it doesn't happen.
Yes,
actually, it does happen. It absolutely does. There are 3 people in New Jersey being prosecuted for that as we speak.
Brandon, don't you know the saying in Chicago, vote early and vote often?
Well,
hey, let's not diss on Chicago. That's my hometown, guys. Come on.
I grew up in that area.
I'm not from Chicago. I live in a little rural town, so
I know.
Yeah, me and Brandon live right next to each other.
And I live up the road from you a ways.
I can tell you I'm from Chicago, and I'm just.
We're sorry.
That just drives me crazy. No, I think that's not cool. I think that drives me crazy when people have these ideas about, like, I think that it would drive you crazy if other people from other places would have an idea of who you are and how things are. It just drives me crazy. Whenever I indicate that I'm from Chicago, that's the first thing people say is how sorry they are that I'm from Chicago. I'm not sorry. I love Chicago. So just saying.
Well, Jayshree, it's one of these things where I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. And back in 1968, when they were having the Democratic Convention and they were having the vote, and Mayor Daley said, tell Jack Kennedy to go to bed because he's going to win Illinois. It's a very corrupt state, and Chicago was very corrupt for Daley.
There's a reason why a lot of governors and politicians have went to jail out of Chicago.
Let's get back to the 60s.
There you go.
Yeah, let's do it.
How about we talk about how black people weren't able to vote in the 60s, and then let's bring it back to today and why are black people so pissed off right now? Correct? Like, why are black people angry? Why are black people protesting? How come we don't trust anybody, right? Like, how come we feel a way in our own country that we don't trust the people that are here to protect us, and we don't trust the politicians anywhere that are here that say that they're for us when all they do is say, well, hey, we want that black vote. And what do we have to do to get the black vote or the Latino vote or the woman vote? How come they never say, hey, I need to get that white man vote? Right? Like, how come they never say we need to get the white man vote? It's always black, Latino, women, right? Never has anything to do with a white guy. Okay. In the 60s, right? Like I talked about Fred Hampton last week. You have 2 guys assassinated in their house or apartment by the Chicago PD. because they felt like it was okay to go kill these two black guys who had done nothing wrong in their sleep, and then set it up in a way to look like that there was a shootout, right? How come this stuff keeps happening? How come in the 60s they didn't want black people voting, and now again we're here in 2020 and they're shutting down polling places in black communities? They don't want us to vote. They still don't want us to vote, and then they try to come up with all these different rules so we don't vote, right? Like, it is a whole lot easier to go vote in Elmwood. It's a whole lot easier to go vote in a suburb of Chicago. It's a whole lot easier to go vote in a suburb of a big city. But when you get into the city where the black people live, Peoria, Chicago, Milwaukee, which I was just watching a thing on them today about the segregation of that city, and how all the white people have moved out to the suburbs and all the black people live in the city, and they use the redlining system in the city of Milwaukee so they can't get loans for their houses, right? Like they can't build up equity in their neighborhoods to move out. Okay.
Actually, that's against the law.
Yeah, it is against the law, but they do it. It's not called redlining anymore, but it's already set up that you can't change it. It was already there, and you can't move it. Go to the south end of Peoria, redlined area. It's still redlined. You're still not getting a loan there because of how they set it up, right?
How set it up?
How the government set it up, how the president set it up. I forgot which one set it up, but redlining was a racist thing to keep black people down, and we would give white people all of this stuff to build equity in their homes, to give them money to put businesses there and jobs, and then we'll leave these people down here and they can't get out, right? There's plenty of stuff out there online that you can look up and see how far behind it put those areas when they did redlining. And even though there is not that term anymore, it's still there. If I go to a bank, they're not going to give me a loan for a South End house in Peoria, right? If I go to the bank and say, hey, I want to open up business on the South End of Peoria, it's going to be a hard time finding a bank or a credit union to give me money for it, right? Like, well, that's how it works. Okay.
Hey, Brandon, if everybody wants, there's a reading material you can get. It's called The Color of Law. It's a forgotten history of how our government segregated America. It's an excellent read. It explains it shows residential lines. It talks about how diverse social economic areas are, and it's based on what the government has set up. This is not it's by a white guy. It's not by an African-American person. It's by a white author who literally did all the research, and it
What's
shows.
The name of it again?
It's The Color of Law.
Well, I was in insurance when I worked, and there was the redlining. It was very important to the insurance companies that I worked for that you could not redline in those areas that you're talking about, because it used to be where if somebody bought a house and they wanted to get insurance, the insurance was going to be so much higher because there were the area maybe was more prone to destruction or whatever,
violence
and the whole 9 yards. But you could not turn somebody down just because of where the house was.
Right, but a bank still can.
Well, I don't think that the bank would have to be on other reasons other than just where the house is. You've got to have income, you've got to have the credit and everything else so you can purchase that house. And I understand what you're saying about that, because there was redlining back in the day, but but it was in the insurance industry. They said, no, you can't do that anymore. And we did not. The prices might be higher, but it wasn't. But even that was bad because you weren't supposed to be charging higher prices.
Right. So then your banks, right, who aren't supposed to be redlining anymore, right. They're technically not, but those areas were so far behind that there was no credit to be given. There was no nice houses. There was no businesses down there. There was no property value in those areas. So then when they do go apply for a loan or business wants to open up down there, there is no value. So therefore you don't get a loan for that property that you want, because the banks are all about making money. And if there's no value on that property, they're not giving you anything.
Well, but it has to do with the credit of the people that are applying for the loan too.
If I, with my credit, go apply for a loan on the south side of Peoria, how many banks do you think would say yes?
I don't know, because I really don't know the south end of Peoria.
Because there's no value there, right? That bank's going to say, oh, heck no, we're not giving you a loan down there. Because you know why? Because there's violence, there's damage, there's all that stuff that was already set up by the government.
It's sort of a vicious cycle.
Right. So they're already behind and you can't catch up, right? Like you already set them back about 20 years before you undo redlining. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to say, oh yeah, all these businesses are going to go in there. No, that's not going to happen. So bring it back to the 60s and the voting though, right? Like, why do you guys think, I'm going to ask a question. This is, I think, my first time asking a question. Why do you guys think they didn't want black people voting then?
Well, I heard an interesting stat the other day that the African Americans vote as a solid block. Like something like 80-90%, even today, tend to vote Democrat. And to me, that just opens up the doors for predatory acts in those areas where that's going to happen. I just heard that stat. I hadn't really thought about it in great detail, but one of the thoughts that came to mind is you're not going to do that in a rural area where, say, any other demographic that doesn't vote as a block, if it's split, there's no effort and there's no reason to make an effort to go in there and do anything predatory. But if you're in an area that, say, is African American, they all vote one way, the bad actors having more bang for their buck, I guess you'd say, if they're going to go in there and do something bad. That's just something to think about.
It makes sense, right? Like, hey, especially if you're going to lose that vote, right? Like, let's make it harder for them to vote because we already know which way they're going to go. So how about we put these rules in so they can't make it, or we put their polling places so far away that they can't get there because they can't afford cars. The bus doesn't go out there or something. And which is, I'm not saying that happens here in our area, but it does happen in big cities outside of Illinois, that we're going to put these polling places so far away that about the time these people get off work and catch a bus, they're going to be closed.
Hey, Brandon, Kentucky, it came out yesterday. Kentucky officials have slashed the number of polling places from 3,700 to 200 statewide. So that's Jefferson City, where Louisville sits. Mm-hmm. It says they will have one site for every 767,000 people. That the county is 1/5 black, 54 miles long, with poor public transit. So yeah. If you ask a question from the 60s, it hasn't changed to now. It right. is, again, trying to keep people from voting, keeping.
Yeah. But is Kentucky, are they doing, or have they passed vote by mail? Are they sent out? Are they going to be sending out the ballots?
Kentucky has not. I haven't seen anything on Kentucky saying vote by mail at all. That is a red state, and I highly doubt that they will be going vote by mail because I mean I don't want to get into politics with it. Like I try to stay away from all of that.
Right.
But they're not going to go vote by mail because McConnell's not going to go vote by mail, right? Like he doesn't want to vote by mail. So
Well, anybody can vote by mail if they just request an absentee ballot.
But
You
how
can-
many people are taught that? I mean,
There are,
go ahead, Janet.
there are, I didn't vote in one election in my life because I had been, Kyle, I think you need to mute your mic.
I got him.
Okay, thank you. Because I could not figure out how to get I could not get my absentee ballot in Illinois because the deadline had passed from Illinois because the deadline had passed, nor could I vote in Maryland because their deadline for registration had passed. Therefore, even though I was a legal resident of Illinois and I was currently living in Maryland, I couldn't vote either place, and I couldn't vote by mail. If you know ahead of time that you're going to vote by mail, and
Right.
you have enough planning done in advance, you're okay. My mom died at 102, and she had voted like 8 times by mail, but she knew that she wouldn't be able to go to the polls, so she planned
Right.
ahead, and I did not because we didn't know where Ted would be stationed. So I just couldn't vote.
Yeah. So in Texas, they a couple weeks ago said that they will not do vote by mail, that people will have to show up to the polling place to vote because they've had all these votes with the COVID going on, and Texas said no, they will have to go to the polling place, and they will not do they will not do the vote by mail. Illinois voted and passed that they will do vote by mail. You can because of COVID as for a ballot to mail in. So just like they're handling the pandemic state by state, they're handling the voting state by state, and depending on your state will depend on if you get to vote by mail and if you have to go in to vote in person. So I would say this is another way of suppressing the vote, because you're going to have people that don't want to go to the polling place in November because of COVID, but then they don't have an option to ask for a mail-in ballot, right? So
no, because they would be able to request the absentee ballot.
In Texas, you cannot, right? Like they just said that you cannot ask for it. You have to show up in person. So like I said, that they're handling this state by state. I don't know what other states have. I know in Illinois you can, because the governor passed it that we can. In Texas, they're saying no, you can't. You have to show up. So in Texas, to suppress that vote of people that don't want to go to the polling place, they're going to have to make a choice. They either show up, wear a mask, and go vote, or you don't go. You don't go wait in that line. And if you're in a bigger city like Houston or Dallas or any of those places, like there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to go out in public like that, especially now since the numbers are starting to go up in those states, right? Now that could change. I'm not saying that it's a for sure thing now, but if their numbers keep spiking, that could change. They might be forced to change it to yes, you can request a mail-in ballot if you want to. But as of right now, that's one state that sticks out to me because that was just a couple weeks ago that they said no, it's got to be in person. Wisconsin, hang on, Coach, I got you. Wisconsin was one when this all started that said they weren't going to move the primary, right, because of COVID. They were going to still have you show up and wait in line. That's another state that says, hey, You need to show up, period. We're not changing anything. And if you want to vote, you need to go wait in line to vote.
Texas does allow you to do an absentee ballot. I just looked it up. They've got some things about you got to be over 65 or you disabled.
Yeah, yes, that's cool. But if you're me, if you're 35, you can't request a absentee ballot. Correct?
No, you can. Well, you can also vote early.
Well, but that's still going in line. That's still going outside. That's still waiting. You know,
okay,
that's the same. That's the same thing. It's a absentee ballot for Illinois is no matter if you're
this is Texas.
If you're 18 to 100 years old in the state of Illinois right now, you can ask for a absentee ballot to vote. Okay, if you're in Texas and you're 18 to 100, if you're 65 and older, or anything else, you know, any kind of medical condition, you can ask for a absentee ballot. If you're 18 to 64 and you don't have any kind of health issues, you have to show up in person. No matter if it's early or on the voting day, you have to show up to vote in person. Coach Hollis.
We started tonight talking about your cousin whose struggle to vote should never have been a struggle to vote, because voting should not be a difficult thing for people to do. Our
Correct.
Government should not make it difficult for people to exercise that right. And as I sit here and listen, I keep hearing ways that test he had to take, all it is being done is reshuffled and wrapped up and put a bow on it. It's lipstick on a pig. And if we're going to say, well, this population who tends to live in impoverished areas, tends to be undereducated, tends to have been failed by many of the government services available to them, that those folks should be easily educating themselves enough and reaching out and finding the resources necessary to absentee ballot or figure out how to get there. No, it shouldn't be that. The government should be going out and finding those people in this situation because it is unique. And we should not be making excuses for why they aren't doing what is their right. The government should be making easy for them. Anytime we are saying it's their fault for not doing absentee ballot, it's their fault for not getting there early, it's their fault for not having a disability, or it's their fault for being worried about getting sick. All we're doing is taking that 4-question test and throwing it back on that group of people. And I guess that's for anybody that doesn't want to go in. We all should be able to vote without an issue. To some of the things we talked about earlier, I have the Illinois by mail voter registration. You do not have to have a state ID or driver's license. You have to have a social security number. Documents required to get a loan in the state of Illinois: a birth certificate, a utility bill. You do not have to have a driver's license or a state ID.
Correct.
Okay, so in Ameren does not require a state ID. So none of that stuff that we said was needed is needed. Somebody can go through our world and not have a photo identification. Now, it might make life a whole lot easier, and companies who decide that they're not going to follow the rules and are going to require that, okay, you get to walk in the door and walk out a little easier. But that's not a requirement that we all have to go out and get our photo taken. You could go through life and get all the things you need without having any of that stuff. I do want to hit on the Confederate flag thing, because I look at that. I'm just gonna read something that probably many of the people listening today, if you've been at a wedding, have heard 1 Corinthians. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childhood things behind me. I think there are a lot of things in my life that as I have grown up, I've realized that what I used to say is not right. And once I became aware of it not being right, I moved on from it. And one person might decide that it doesn't offend them, but when the greater good decides, a vast group of people decides that a symbol is oppressing them, or a symbol is just nasty, for a person to move in adulthood, they move on from that. They are introspective enough to realize that maybe I need to change the way I am thinking, because whatever it is, the symbol, the word I'm using, whatever, I can easily change what I'm doing, and it will not affect those other people over there. To say that somebody is, if you were to throw out the swastika right now, and anybody were to say, well, that shouldn't be offensive, that's been a symbol of peace for 5,000 years. I don't think anybody in Western civilization would look at that and say, yeah, that's a reasonable argument. I think Jay Shree hit it right on the head. It's part of her heritage, but she recognizes where she lives and what that means to people, and is not going to do that. I applaud that NASCAR looked at what they were doing and said, you know what, there's a whole group of people that the General Lee is offensive to, and we would like to include them. Now, there are people who are offended by that and say, gosh, that's taking our heritage away. But you have an entire corporation that is based in the South that has decided, you know what, the South needs to go away. That part of the South needs to go away. Now, hey, put it in the museum. I mean, it was the Confederate flag. That was the flag of the Confederacy from 1863 to the end of the war. So let's not say it wasn't. It was for 3 years almost. It was the flag of the Confederacy. I just think some of that is needing to be introspective and look at things and say, you know what? Maybe my thought process needs to be a little bit more open to the people who are not like me, who might be on the short end of the stick. Because those who have grown up with a little bit of privilege, because I happen to be born to 2 white parents and I happen to go to high school up in the suburbs, my gosh, I need to be aware that, man, I hit the jackpot a little bit, and that maybe there's some people that have a tougher time just because of the color of their skin, and recognize that this voter fraud or the voter stuff is real, and it hasn't changed from when Brandon's cousin had to go through it in 1960. It just hasn't changed that much.
Can I say one more thing about the whole voter oppression portion? We know that COVID-19 hits the African American and Latinx population at a much higher rate. I mean, it's so significant and so jarring. And so when we're asking these individuals to go to one location and stand in line and be around all these other people, they are definitely susceptible. My gosh, more than 125,000 people have died from this, and I know that we here in Central Illinois are buffered because we're in a rural area. But I tell you, in Chicago, I have family that live in Chicago. It is a real thing, and it affects them on a day-to-day basis, and it's very scary. And so expecting them to go out and put themselves in danger, that's another way. It's like the subtle ways, right? It's not in your face way. It's a very subtle way, right, of suppressing folks. I mean, it's kind of like, I'll use this as an example, and I know, but it's like when people talk to me and they'll say, my gosh, Jayshree, you don't sound Indian at all. It's like a very subtle way of I grew up in Chicago. Before I would say that I'm Indian in a lot of ways, I would say that I'm a Chicagoan. And so that's so strange to me when people tell me that I don't sound Indian, because then I'm like, what does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? It's like that. It's that subtlety that I was talking about.
Right. Yep. I've got friends that are, Korean that have never been to Korea. And people ask them, hey, where are you from? I'm from Atlanta. No. Like, where are you from? Right. Like it's one of those like subtle, like, hey, I don't mean to be racist, but I'm kind of being racist right now, kind of deals. But yeah, the voter suppression has been going on forever, right? Like to have a amendment to be able to vote, and then to not be able to vote years after that was passed, is big. And then everything that I've talked about these last 4 weeks, we just flip it to 2020, right? Like everything that's happening now happened then. Our history repeats itself because we don't talk about it. We don't educate our youth on it, right? Like we don't educate the adults on it. Not unless they go pick a class in college to learn about it. The whole thing about Black history is there's so much of it. There's so much Black history. There's so much American history, period, not just Black history, that we're not being taught, right? Like it is all watered down, right? It is, hey, look at America. We're so good, right? We are great. The whole thing about great again, right, is I have the question of when, what year, what date, what time was America ever so great that we need to go back and make it great again, right? Because this country has not been great for everybody over the years, right? Native Americans, we can, the Pilgrims come here, Native Americans are here, they're killed, slaughtered, whatever, take their land, build railroads, do all that stuff. Hey, slave trade over in Africa. Let's go ahead and bring some Africans over here. Well, first the Irish slave trade first. And then, hey, there's some bigger, stronger people over in Africa, and we can get those guys and we'll bring them over here. So then they go through the slavery, and then we have a big war about it, right? And then they're set free. And then, okay, great, they're set free. But then let's segregate everything, right? So Black people are over here, white people are over here. White people drink out of this water fountain. Blacks drink out of this one. Blacks, you can't eat in this restaurant. You got to go to the back and pick up your food, right? Now, I just skipped a lot of Native American history, right? Like a whole lot of history that we didn't learn about them in school. Okay. But then this is all we learn about in school, right? Segregation. Okay. Water fountain, restrooms, all that stuff, right? Okay. Now we're past that. Now we're going to school together. We get one little girl to go to school. Right? We start putting Black kids in white schools. We start sending white kids to Black schools and all that stuff. Hey, we need to get these guys used to each other and all this stuff. They have fights. They don't want, it's not working out. Right? Communities are burned to the ground. Right? Black Wall Street burned to the ground. Another community that I want to talk about is the community in Central Park in New York that was bulldozed. A Black community in Central Park that was bulldozed, and then they built Central Park on top of it. Right? Like we don't learn about that either. Right? Like there's so much history. So then so now we're in school, right? Well, now that you're in school, we don't want you playing our sports. Right? Like you're not gonna be with us in sports. You can't use the same showers. I mean, you get it? Like, when was it great for everybody? Okay. Oh, we're going to move out of the city now, and we're going to redline your area. We're going to leave and build suburbs and then redline you so you can't get any loans for your houses. Okay. So then we don't really talk about that, but we all know that it's there. Right. But then you keep going. It's still, we don't want you to vote. It's still, we're going to put you in prison. It's still, we're going to kill you. It's still all of that stuff. The Klan, all of that. The Klan is still here, right? When will the Klan be considered a terrorist organization? Why are they not considered a terrorist organization, right? how come white supremacists aren't considered a terrorist organization? Okay. Again, everything. Voting is just a little thing, right? Like I was listening to this comedian and he said, hey, black people are only asking for civil rights. We're not asking to be equal. We're asking for civil rights. Civil. The word civil. That means be civil. Be nice, right? Help out your fellow neighbor. He said, Black Lives Matter, right? Like we're just saying matter, right? Like not we're equal to, not we're better, not any of that. Black Lives Matter. Okay. So then he goes, all right, can we just say Black lives exist? Like, can we get that? Right? Like, can we get that part of it? To if the matter part is so big or too big, then we'll just go Black lives exist, right? Like, hey, at least acknowledge that we're here. Let us know that you see us. Yeah, we're here. We live with you. You know, we kind of go to school with you and eat at the same restaurants. But that's where we are. Like to have to have a slogan that Black Lives Matter in 2020 shows us how far away our country really is. Right? Like to talk about voting suppression back in the 60s and then talk about voter suppression in 2020 and then talk about lives that were taken by the Klan and the Black Panther Party doing what they did to protect black people, but then to talk about Black Lives Matter in 2020, that shows us exactly how far away we are from making this country great and for just being acknowledged that we are Americans, right? And that we share the same passion for this country as everybody else does. Okay. So if we're still in 2030, you know, going over the same stuff, we haven't made any strides, right? Like I feel like from 1963, when my cousin registered to vote, to 2020, we've made strides, but we aren't where we need to be. If you want to vote, you should be able to go vote, period. No questions asked. You have a social security number attached to your name when you step foot into this country. When you're born, you have that number. You should be able to go vote, period. If I don't have to have an ID to fill out a credit card form online, which you don't, I should not have to have an ID to go vote when you have my signature from when I got my license or when I got my first ID. So to put different things on there and say, like Coach Hollis said, is like putting lipstick on a pig, right? Like we just wrapped it up in a bow and made it something different. I mean, that is a civil right. That is a right that everybody over the age of 18 has. And if we can't just get past that one simple right to vote and to be able to vote for president or governor or mayor or city council or anything like that, because you want to make different rules and change them every so often, we haven't changed. We're not even close to where we need to be. And I'll say it every week, probably. Until we get off the red versus blue crap, nothing's ever going to change. Until people can find common ground on one thing and then build together, you're not going to get anything done. If you're big man on Facebook and you're talking red or blue, nothing's going to change. until we can have conversations like this, you know, and learn from each other and like agree on one. I'm not saying everything. If you can agree on one thing, that's more than what anybody gets done on any kind of social media forum. Right? Like Cody, I'll say it again. Cody and I have had a lot of conversations, right? I haven't heard from Cody since he's on vacation. So I made sure to send him a message today and say, hey, man, are you still in Illinois or what's up? Haven't heard, haven't heard from you. Checking in on him. And he said, hey, I'm going to be a part of your meeting tonight. Cool. Already sent you the email, right? Like, we don't agree on everything, but we have found out that we agree on some things, right? This is, I think, after we got into an argument or something, and then we find, we started off little, and then we built on that, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're talking almost every day. And yeah, we don't agree on everything. Nobody's ever going to agree on everything. But if we all stay in the red and blue, and we can't just go straight down the middle and find common ground that way, nothing's ever going to change. Like this conversation tonight, right? This conversation tonight about the voter registration, after I said you can vote, right, without an ID, right? You can get stuff without an ID. There is like people like, no, well, you gotta do this and this and this. No, you don't. Coach Hollis just read it all, right? So it's like, for one thing, I'm not coming in here just shooting blind, right? Like I'm coming in here ready for those type of questions, ready for that stuff. So right after tonight, I'll be tomorrow working on my next project. But until we come together as a country, until we come together as humans, not even as a country, until we come together as humans, right, and recognize each other as human beings in this country, in this world, we'll never get any work done. We'll never take that step forward. We'll always take one step and then take two steps back, right? Like all of this stuff with the Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. Do we need all that? We shouldn't. We shouldn't have to say Black Lives Matter, right? Like we shouldn't have to say, all lives matter. We shouldn't have to say that Blue Lives Matter. But until people start seeing it for what it is, nobody said all lives matter until they said Black lives. Nobody said blue lives until they said Black lives, right? Nobody said blue lives until they started making flags with a blue stripe on it so they can make money off of it, right? Like blue lives did not matter until somebody came up with this flag and started putting it on shirts. And now they're making a bunch of money off of it. All lives matter didn't matter when kids are sitting at the border stripped away from their parents, right? Like all lives matter did not matter in certain things, correct? If all lives matter, you would be just as pissed off as we are that we're being hunted and killed in the street. That there are multiple videos over and over and over of people getting killed. And then let's not even go as far as killed, but random people calling the cops on Black people sitting in a park or barbecuing in a park or setting up stuff for Halloween or swimming in a pool at a hotel. Right? Like that stuff needs to stop. And that all starts with other stuff. everybody should have the right to vote, period. No matter the color of your skin, your sex, whatever, right? You were born in this country, or you came into this country and you got your green card and you did it legally, you should be able to vote.
Unfortunately, Brandon, there's a lot of people that come into this country illegally and they vote. And that's something that shouldn't be, because if
I would love to see the research that you have on that.
I will find it for you.
Because you can't vote if you don't have a social security number.
And they buy social security numbers.
From who?
From whomever.
From the dead?
Never mind.
I'm just asking a question.
Well, it's well documented that there's social security numbers, that the illegals get the numbers from someone, and then they can go and work. But wait a second, please. Just let me finish, because then I'm going to leave the conversation. But it's one of those things.
We listen to you.
Pardon me?
Lord, if you're just going to talk and leave, then just leave. If you're not going to have a conversation with people.
And thank you for being so civil, Mr. Todd. Look,
then let people rebuttal to what you're going to say. Don't make your comment.
How can you rebuttal if I haven't said it? Never mind. Thank you, Brandon. I enjoyed your thing tonight. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment that she not call people illegals, because they're human beings, not illegals. And I just, because I'm an immigrant, that touches very close to my heart. One thing that I did want to share with this group was that I am organizing based on what Brandon was talking about. I just wanted to touch base on that because he was talking about Black Lives Matter. I am trying to organize a Black Lives Matter support rally for Elmwood, Uptown. I'm in the process of working with and I'm hoping to have something. It won't be very long, about an hour and a half. And there's a really great group of kids that have been putting together stuff in Peoria. And I've gotten in contact with them because I think they have some really well worth, just like the things that Brandon is talking about, things that they could share with our community. And I'm hoping that you guys will, when we get around to getting the information out to our community, I hope that you guys all will be able to attend that. So thank you. That was my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I want to say something about voting. I came to the U.S. legally. I had a social security number. I had a green card. I was working and everything, but I could not vote until I became a citizen. So when I got my citizenship after 7 years of living here, that's when I was able to vote. So it's not because I had a social security, because I had one, because that's the way how I was able to work. I had a green card that they gave me the permission to work, and I worked at the hospital here in Peoria for many, many years, but was not able to vote for any type of voting until I had my citizenship. And when I registered to vote, that was the first thing that they asked me. So I don't know how they could do it without showing proof that they are U.S. citizens.
Right. And that's pretty much what I was going to go to. But thank you for explaining that, since you had to go through that yourself.
Yep. I've been at the U.S. for 40 years. Like I said, I came in here legally with all my papers. My husband is from here, so that's how I got my my green card from the U.S. Embassy in Colombia, and for me to start working, even though I had the green card to be able to work, but I was not hired until I had a social security number. So after I got the social security number, I was able to finish my application at the hospital. But like I say, that didn't mean that I was able to vote, not until I had my citizenship.
Right.
So I don't know how people saying that they could vote just with the social security number, because I was not able to do it.
Right. Yeah, unless we go down and register to vote at the DMV, right? You go get a ID or whatever, or you walk in and say, "Hey, I want to register to vote." I'm like you said, I'm finding it hard to believe that somebody just walks in and says they want to vote when there's no record of them registering, right? Like, you can't just walk in and vote. And then to register, I just got information that between 2000 and 2017, there was 540 people that voted that, that weren't citizens. So 540 compared to the number of what people believe is out there. And then most of that is a misunderstanding at the DMV, with the license and ID and all that stuff. So that is on the people that work. That's on the people that are running the DMV. That's on the people that are working those jobs, putting in the numbers, and accidentally put in something and let them register to vote. If I walk in and I'm going in to get my license and the guy's like, "Hey, do you want to register to vote?" And I'm like, "Sure, I guess." And they give me the info, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. But Pilar, you hit the.
I was unable to do. I had my driver's license from the beginning, but I was never able to register to vote.
Right.
Because I didn't have a citizenship.
Right.
So.
And it's probably one of those things now that 30 years ago when you were trying to do it, it was a lot harder to register to vote. You had to actually physically. Now when you go into the DMV, they just sign you up. And it's a lot easier for somebody to make a mistake, check a box that they shouldn't have, or, things have changed so much that, registering to vote could be an accident, and there could be more of that. But we know that people circumvent the system all the time to do all kinds of things, not just to vote, to do all kinds of things. So it can happen. I don't like that information that just was put up there, 544 out of how many? 92 million people that voted.
Yeah.
We know it's going to happen. It's just, the number I don't think is as big as people try to claim that it is.
But, I look at for my family, both my parents are immigrants from Ireland and stuff like that, and we had cousins that come over. They're not coming over here to vote. They're coming here to make money, then going back home. So if they're not here to they're here to make financial gains so they can send it back home to their home countries. Yeah, the falseness of these people saying that they're legal voting is just that drives me crazy. It's the same people that are saying that the coronavirus will go away November 3rd because when the elections are over, everybody that's going to happen. The mentality, I don't understand that at all. I don't understand how you can place this, that skew of a number on such a. It just drives me nuts as a listening to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to apologize to the group for getting a little fired up there. It's supposed to be an open dialogue, and I got a little bit, sorry.
Yeah, but when it's open, somebody should be able to rebuttal what you're going to say. I mean, that's how that would be like me getting on Facebook and then writing you a message and then blocking you. Right? I mean, that's kind of, so I can't say nothing, or that person can't say anything back to me, but I got my point across. But now I'm not going to see what they say, but no,
I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that she didn't call. I didn't like the term illegals. It bothers me, and so I just wanted to make sure that I clarify that I don't want her to say that. I think that's rude. Just like any other word that can be offensive, you correct people when you hear that, you know, and so that's what I wasn't trying to cut her off or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. So again, let's flip it back to what we came here for tonight, right? Voter suppression, Reverend Joe Carter beat it, right? He beat that in 63, even though no matter what, they didn't want him to do it, and they were going to kill him for it. Okay. But at some point, somebody has to take a stand to make a difference. So I don't know. I'll just say, I don't know what's going to happen with this forum. Okay. I don't know what will happen after this week. I don't know what will happen in next month, couple months, a year to come. All I know is that I'm at that point in my life that I feel like I need to stand up. I can't sit down anymore. I have to speak up. And if this is what it takes to do these type of videos, these type of meetings, and then posting them, and that can help me get my point across, great. There are a lot of things that are starting to happen. I've been talking to the coaches. So yeah, it's been crazy since that newspaper article went out last week, you know. So to it being in San Francisco, Seattle, Houston, Boston, Chicago, you know, the lieutenant governor of Illinois tweeting it, you know, it's been crazy. And then getting messages from people all over the United States about what I'm doing has been incredible. It's been humbling. Like I said, I never thought I had a voice. Never thought I had a platform. I just thought I was a coach in Elmwood that will hopefully make a difference to my football program. And hopefully they see, you know, I can help them see Black people in a positive light, you know, and if they have any kind of prejudices or anything like that, maybe I can help get rid of some of that. And then that also goes to the teams that I coach against, right? Because I'm probably living out in Elmwood and going out to those. I'm probably the only Black guy that they'll see in a long time, right? In rural America, there's not a lot of us out here. Referees and coaches. That's about it. And that's not a lot of, you know, you're not really talking to them, but they do see you, and to stay positive in that way can change somebody's life, can change somebody's attitude just by doing that. So I would like to thank everybody for coming tonight. We will be doing it again next week. I'm debating on either doing a topic, or since it is week 5, having a open discussion about what's going on in the world, what's going on in our country with the election coming up, what's going on with the killings, what's going on with people, like I said earlier, people calling the cops on people for no reason. Because right now I feel like that's what we need. And I feel like we're going backwards as a nation. We're going backwards. We aren't segregated now, but man, it feels like we're going that way, right? Big time. Every time I turn on the TV, there's something new. And every time I look at the news, there's a case that was closed that's being reopened, right? Because of something that happened, which is sad, right? Guys got off who were in the wrong, cases reopened. It's that has to stop. If you do something wrong at your job, you should be punished for it, period. If I do something wrong at my job, I'm going to be punished. So it should go for everybody. So I got some topics from Cody that he would like to go over. I got some. If anybody else wants to send anything, that's fine. I do really want to get into the Freedom Summer of 1964 with the core group in Mississippi when they had those deaths down there. So I will let you guys know tomorrow on the page, and then also invite your friends. Right, invite your friends to the page. If they can't join on Tuesday night, I will be posting the videos on the Facebook page, and they can watch it whenever they get a chance to. So thank you again for coming tonight. Thank you for the open dialogue that we had tonight. And,
Thank you.
And wish you guys the best. And let's move forward, right? Let's not go backwards. Let's keep moving forward. See you guys.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.